goals, passions, dreams. My guests will help inspire you to find your true calling. They will be sharing their success stories as well as their journey. So watch me on Trending with Suyo. Welcome to Trending with Suyo. I am your host, Suyo. Every week we'll have an interesting member of the Tamil community share thoughts about their career, passion, and lives. These individuals will give you a rare perspective on the best moments and also the challenges of their chosen paths. So join me every week to see what you learn. Today I have a very inspiring individual with me. She's actually a counselor, a mental health therapist. She works for a children's mental health clinic. So here to tell you more, Senthuri. Senthuri, hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being here. First of all, I did mention that you work for a mental health clinic for children. Tell us how you got into that line of work.
Sure. So when I was in school, I was studying psychology and I absolutely loved it.
Okay.
And a lot of people told me that I was really good at speaking to people, so I just followed that path and ended up doing my master's in counseling psychology and working at the clinic that I do now.
Okay, so tell us exactly what you do at the clinic.
Sure. So I'm a mental health therapist, which means that I see kids that are from 12 to 18, and we do long-term counseling. The place that I work at, we also have a walk-in clinic as well. So I assist people that might be having a mental health crisis or going through depression or anxiety, and just working through their difficulties through counseling.
Okay, and like this topic is not very easy to discuss, and it's very, it's considered like a taboo in our society, right? So, but a lot has changed since, like my time, where we would kind of brush it under the table. We don't want to talk about it and things like that. I feel like more awareness is coming out now. But what advice would you give to somebody who has, who knows somebody who has this illness?
Right. I want to touch on the point about, I guess, mental health in our community, because I think that there's actually a lot of mental health concerns among the South Asian and particularly the Tamil community. Okay. And I find that there isn't a lot of awareness and a lot of, I guess, acceptance of mental health, and there's so much stigmatization. And I think lately there has been things like suicide and anxiety and depression among Tamil youth, and it's really quite sad because they're not getting the help that they need. But what would I say to people that are going through crisis is to really seek help, whether it's through counseling, whether it's talking to a teacher, someone that you trust. I think the more you kind of repress these concerns, the bigger that they come back. So I would advise anyone going through a difficult time to seek help. There's resources online, there's resources at schools, at universities, through work, through HR, and just kind of having your voice heard is so, so important, because when you suffer in silence, it makes it that much harder to kind of receive the help that you do need, and there's so much help out there. And
what can you tell people that know somebody that's going through this? How can they help? Like, is there like a step process, like a 3-step process, for example, that they can take to kind of get these people to get help? Because obviously, when we tell them like, okay, you need to get help, they're not gonna be like, okay, yeah, let's go. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
So what do you think is like, what can we do?
Right. I think a lot of people have known someone that's gone through a hard time, and I think the first step would be to kind of acknowledge, right, and understand what they're going through. So if you see signs in a friend or a coworker or someone you know that looks like they're going through a hard time, start developing a relationship with them where they can learn to trust you. Okay. So whether it's asking about their day, noticing and commenting on, whether they look extremely tired or sad, just having that conversation, it lets them know that you're caring. Okay. Because a lot of people that suffer don't feel like their time is really worth anyone's. So I think letting them know that you're there for them is a huge help. And I think once you're there, I think if they're receptive to it, you can refer them to resources. If you feel like you can't really help them through the thing that they're going through, whether it's something with anxiety, a relationship, parental conflict, and you feel like you can't kind of provide the support with them, then refer them to resources. And there's so many, especially in Scarborough and Markham and the GTA, there's a lot of resources, there's a lot of clinics. And if it means that you can kind of go with them to the walk-in clinic, go with them to a psychologist, support them, if that's what they need, definitely do that. And just kind of spending that one-on-one time with them is absolutely therapeutic for them. So once you notice the signs, speak to them, try to develop a relationship, whether it's just spending time with them, right? And then refer them to resources and encourage them to seek help.
Okay. And a personal question to you.
Sure.
You know, like sometimes I hear stories that, that are really, it's heartbreaking.
Sure.
And when I go home, I can't even shake that off. I can't even forget about it. And you're like, you know, seeing this like on a daily basis. How do you separate your two worlds from like work and home?
Yeah.
Like, do you bring that home and like, do you think about it, or like what do you go through?
That's a good question. And I think I have this kind of talk with my coworkers a lot. And I think the consensus among me and my coworkers is that we acknowledge that there is suffering in the world, right? And that is what is there. And I feel like people that go into this field, mental health or healthcare, or being a cop, like I feel like people that go into this field understand that there is suffering, but we choose to acknowledge it, right? We can't ignore it, it's there. And I feel like because I have an interest in assisting people, speaking to people, I chose that path. In terms of kind of dealing with that sort of pain, what I understand is that at least I'm doing something about it. And really, like when I'm speaking to people, as much as there's so much suffering and I hear very, very sad things, I also see a lot of hope. Right? Because people that are coming to me are at a point where they want to change their life. So there's so many amazing stories of people kind of getting over their mental illness or overcoming a challenge. So I think that hope and that resiliency that I see is also a huge factor in why I keep doing that work I do. That even though I'm seeing suffering, I'm seeing really, really beautiful people. And it's a good balance of, you know, maybe good and bad.
And you think that, you know, if they seek help early, they can kind of, you know, get out of this, right? Whether like rather than coming to you very late, I guess, right?
Right. I think early intervention is so important because once you kind of get the resources early, then you have like the ability and capacity to go through what you're doing instead of kind of going at the late stage where you're extremely distressed. Absolutely.
And you know, one thing that I love about you so much is that you're always traveling, and you're not traveling just for like the pleasure. You're still doing things for others while you're traveling. So can you tell us some of the you know, organizations that you actually got involved with?
Sure. Yeah. So I think I've loved traveling for a very, very long time, and I think a lot of people do. But I've also realized that traveling can be very like hedonistic, what I mean by that, it's very like going there, having fun, which I love to do, but I also feel that like if I'm traveling to a place and there's like social issues, I want to kind of take part in that. So when I was a lot younger, I did a lot of work with doctors, healthcare practitioners, with a lot of local organizations. So I worked with one organization in the northern Thailand where I was helping a doctor with his projects in the north for Burmese refugees. I've worked with Roma population in Kosovo. In Cambodia, I worked with a monk and helped his village out. So it was just really, really fun because I guess I'm traveling, but I'm also kind of seeing local stories. Because as much as we travel, I think that if you're just on resorts and you know you're just kind of in the best parts, like that's only one chapter of that country, right? I feel like I want to see as many different facets of a country because I think then I get a better understanding of what that country is about.
And I think that a lot of us do want to do that as well, but we don't know about these things. We don't know that, you know, there's stuff like this exists. So how can we find these resources? Like how, if somebody's watching, they're like, oh my gosh, we want to be like Senthuri and we want to kind of go out there and do it. What steps do they need to take?
Well, I think with social media, I think there's just so much information. So I think if you're just interested in doing any sort of volunteer and NGO work, I think you just start by Googling that. I know in a lot of universities and colleges, there's a lot of groups that do a lot of volunteer work abroad. So I think joining a group would be very, very helpful in that. I know there's a lot of websites like Nomadic Matt and Wandering Earl. Like these are just websites where they kind of promote traveling, but there's also options to kind of volunteer abroad. So I think once you just start looking it up, speaking to people, like those kind of opportunities come. I don't think it's like that difficult anymore.
Okay. And you know, you've done work locally and internationally.
Sure.
So what do you think the difference is?
Sure. So I think when I'm working locally, so doing my work here, it's really, really great because I know the climate, I know the conditions where people are, and I feel really, really happy to be doing work here. But when I'm doing work abroad, it's like a different climate, it's a different condition. I don't really know sometimes the language, sometimes the traditions. So I find that difficult, but I also find it really, really enriching because not only am I doing work, but I'm also learning about how other people operate. So I think doing work abroad is like stepping outside of my comfort zone, which is really, really important for me.
Yeah. And you know, like traveling is not easy. And like, how do you have the time to travel while you're, you know, at work and all that stuff?
Right. It's a big question. I think for a lot of people, if they're, you know, in a job, they get 2 weeks. For a lot of students, they get a couple months. So I think it's kind of being realistic of what you can do. So I know for me, when I was on my university breaks and I had a couple months off, I would like work throughout the year and then take those months to travel. With work, sometimes what I'll do is I'll work throughout the year and ask, you know, my supervisor for like an extended leave. So I think it's just, if you have the interest in traveling, working around your schedule and obviously your challenges. I don't think everyone has the privilege to the privilege to travel, sorry. But I think that if that's your interest, you can find a way to make it work.
Okay. And a lot of us obviously want to travel,
Sure,
but
yeah.
I think the biggest setback is the finances, of course.
Right.
And you know, some people, like you said, with jobs and schools
Sure.
and family life. So what do you tell people like us who want to travel, who want to do this, like, but financially can't do it, for example? What would you tell us?
I think it's so important to understand what your barriers are, because I don't think, like you said, everyone has the resources to travel. But I think that if it is something that you're interested in and you have a passion to travel, I think what you should start to do is maybe make a plan, right? Maybe you can't travel within the next 6 months or the year, but maybe you can make a plan to travel in 2 years. So that means that you're saving up. Maybe you need to kind of reduce your costs, or maybe reduce the cost for shopping or buying shoes, or work part-time. Like, if your interest is there, I think you can find ways to kind of cut back your costs and maybe like set up an account where you have a little bit of money. So if it means you can get away for 2 weeks in 2 years, that's still something. If you can get away for a couple months, that's even better. But understanding what your challenges are, right? Because people have mortgages, people have full-time jobs, some people have kids, right? So it does make it more difficult, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means that you have to prepare more and figure out how you're going to support yourself during that time.
So it's definitely doable.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so we'll actually take a quick short commercial break and we'll talk more with Senthuri. Trending with Suyo. Trending with Suyo. Thank you for joining me on Trending with Suyo, and we are talking with Senthuri. So let's get back. Senthuri, you've traveled around the world, basically. So name a few countries for us that you've traveled to, so we can be jealous.
Sure. I've been mostly over Asia. I mean, I've obviously gone to Sri Lanka, India, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Malaysia. I covered most of Southeast Asia, and I've done a few trips to South America, Central America, parts of Europe, and
wow.
Yeah, it's just something that I really enjoy doing.
And are you able to tell us how old you are?
Sure, I'm 26.
26, wow. Well, what am I doing with my life? That's amazing, Senthuri. First of all, hats off to you for being so young and like accomplished so much at such a young age. You're definitely an inspiration. So just honestly, like, kudos to you and hats off to you.
That's so sweet.
So tell us, so what, out of all these countries, what was your favorite, or what was your most memorable experience?
I think going to Cambodia was a huge one for me. When I was there, I was working with a monk that just cared about his village so much, and he opened up an organization called Respect and Serving the Poor, and I went with a team of people, and we just assisted in projects, so like building a hospital and a library, and just like being with the community. And I think just being there in that village with him was just so beautiful, because you just kind of see people that really care about their home. And it was interesting too, because Cambodia also went through a very, you know, tragic civil war, just like Sri Lanka, and I visited like they have something called the killing fields in prisons, and just seeing that was very horrific, but also kind of reminded me of, like, you know, our own past, of where we come from in Sri Lanka. And so it was just kind of like a trip where I kind of saw like a lot of the country, and also were with the people. So I really enjoyed just being there. It's a beautiful place to be.
Wow, that's amazing. How long did you stay for?
In Cambodia, I was there for 1 month.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So like when you go on these trips, like you're actually like staying for a long period of time and actually getting very involved, I would think.
Yeah, I try to stay for as long as I can, just because I think sometimes when you're there for longer, you just get a fuller experience. It's nice to go for 10 days or 2 weeks. I mean, sometimes that's what I have to do too, but if I can stay for longer, then I just get more experiences there, right?
Yeah, for sure. You know, you're traveling alone in some cases. What are, like, do you ever feel scared, or do you ever, like, find any challenges with doing that?
Sure, I think being a solo traveler and a solo female traveler is definitely scary. I mean, when I first started doing it, I was definitely like on guard a lot, but I think it's a lot about how you carry yourself. I think being smart, like street smart, is very, very important. But like the more I travel, the more I meet solo female travelers. So I think it's just being very, I guess, like cautious and very smart, but also trusting that there's a lot of people there that are just kind of want to do good. So if it means just booking your hostel ahead of time, planning your trip so you feel more secure, that's what you need to do. But I feel more than anything, I feel like the world, as much as there's so much like bad things going on, it's also very safe. So I kind of have that trust when I go forward and hope, you know, for the best.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that you should open up your own blog and, you know, have share your experiences on these beautiful journeys, right? And people that probably want to do what you're doing now, they could even reach out to you for some advice. You know,
That's interesting.
Something
Yeah,
to look into. This is definitely your line of work and your passion, you would say.
Right.
So one question that I ask to all my guests is that, you know, let's say, you know, my viewers are working like 9 to 5, and there's like this, you know, something that they really want to do. They're just not taking that step. So what advice would you give to them watching?
I think it's a very big question. I think a lot of people are kind of stuck in the rut of doing their 9 to 5 and still want to live out their dream. And I think it's just really a step of courage, right? If there's something that you really want to do in your life, I think that you have to commit to it, right? So if that means that you have to work in a 9 to 5 for a while to support yourself, that's fine. But if there's a dream that you have, you just kind of have to face that reality, right? And work towards it. So if it means preparing, if it means going out there, following your dream, you just have to commit to that goal and work towards it. And you can take small steps, you can take a leap of faith, but you just have to really look at yourself and decide what you want, because you know this life, it's short, right? And you only have so much time and so much energy to do what you want.
Yeah, that's awesome. And coming back to the question about the mental health issues, because there's, I feel like there's so many people that are, because of this, like maybe this routine life, getting, you know, down of not wanting, I mean, not being able to do what they want to do, and then they get stuck, and then they get depressed, and then it, maybe even something worse than that, right? So, like, I feel like we need to create more awareness. So what can you tell maybe someone out there who, you know, like maybe they're gonna see a stranger on the road who is going through something, and you know, like we would probably like be laughing at them or something and be like, oh, you know, why are they acting different or whatever, right? So what advice would you give somebody like that's, you know, that's you see someone going through that, like what would you say?
I would say, like, I think that like putting away judgment and really assuming that you don't know anything about anyone is really, really important. Whether it's someone that's in your class or a coworker, like there's so much we don't know about people. And if someone looks really sad or depressed or angry, I mean, I think all of us kind of have assumptions that like, or they're just mean or they're just sad, but you really don't know the factors that influence them, right? You don't know what goes on in their personal life, at home, in their relationships. So I think if you kind of go in with this idea of like, I'm ready to learn, I don't really know what's going on, but obviously this person is in pain or there's something maybe wrong. I think kind of going in with that open approach is so helpful because it clears away judgment, but also when you're going in with that approach, that person is going to be more receptive to telling you things. If they see you kind of judging them or looking at you differently, they're going to be more held back because that's how everyone kind of sees them. There's so many barriers there. But if you kind of go in with compassion, with love, like I feel like people are going to be so much more receptive to sharing things with you. So I would just say that if you're seeing someone in pain, depending on your comfort level, if it's a stranger or if just someone you know, kind of go in with that because like you can really save a life. You have no idea what this person is thinking, what their plans are, and having a really sweet conversation with them can really alter their perception of how they view themselves.
What do you think we can do to create more awareness in this topic?
So in terms of awareness, I think kind of speaking out about it is really, really important. I think mental health is just kind of getting the speed that it needs. But there's obviously a lot of judgments that we have in terms of, you know, saying that person is crazy or that person's just depressed or angry. I think there's so many things that we say that's part of our language. I think we really have to reverse that. I think we have to be really cautious how we speak about things, but also speaking about it in a really frank way. I think people, especially in our community, are really afraid to talk about things that go on in their personal life. And again, that's comfort. But I think that when you kind of share the things that you're going through with other people, they're going to be so much more open to doing the same, right? So I think being open yourself and sharing the things that you feel are important allows other people to kind of share those things as well. So it can start on the ground level.
Right. Thank you so much. You've really inspired me, being so young and doing all the things that you've already accomplished. And you're not done here. You want to do more. You said, right? Like, what's in future for Senthuri next? And where are you going to travel next?
I think I really want to travel long term. I think it's something that I've really wanted to do. So I don't know. I think I really want to go back to Asia and spend a lot of time there. I think Asia, the continent itself, is so diverse. But in terms of mental health, yeah, like continuing in that field, expanding. I really don't know. I don't really have this massive plan yet, but I'm just open to a lot of new things.
Wow. Well, continue doing what you're doing. You're inspiring so many people. You've inspired me. And hopefully, like, my viewers are really happy with, you know, what they heard today, and they're going to make sure that they take your advice, and next time that they, you know, encounter an experience, that they will definitely keep your words in mind. So thank you so much for being here. Thanks, Senthuri. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. It was very, very inspiring. You guys definitely can save a life. So keep Senthuri's words in mind and do travel. Like she mentioned so many points for us. We have no excuses now. So definitely get out there and do your part to save the world. And I will see you guys next time on Trending with Suyo. Bye-bye. Goals, passions, dreams. My guests will help inspire you to find your true calling. They will be sharing their success stories as well as their journey. So watch me on Trending with Suyo.